This one, this one. So start. Hello, good morning, students. I hope most of you have joined up by now. You have your church. This church will be enough. Hmm? Okay. So we'll be discussing about congenital cyanotic heart disease. So just to give you a brief idea about congenital heart disease, whenever we come across any child with suspected heart disease, first you have to ascertain whether this child is having any heart disease or not. So if it is a heart disease, if it is a heart disease, oh, I can do it. So if it is a heart disease, you find out whether it is severe or not, whether it is affecting or not, affecting the child's life or not. Then you have to find out whether it is congenital heart disease or acquired heart disease. Out of acquired heart disease, it can be rheumatic heart disease, it can be disease of the myocardium, like myocarditis, cardiomyopathy, etc., pericarditis, and so on and so forth. Or it is a congenital heart disease. Supposing we narrow down to it is a congenital heart disease, there is NADAS criteria by which we can find out. I'm not going into details into it. There are major and minor criteria of NADAS to diagnose congenital heart disease. We have to find out amongst the congenital heart disease whether it is cyanotic or acyanotic. So supposing it is cyanotic heart disease, we have to again differentiate into increased pulmonary blood flow or decreased pulmonary blood. Basically, you get congenital heart disease with some abnormal shunt, abnormal connection between the right side and the left side, or there can be stenosis. These are the major defects, or there can be combination of them. So let us come to tetralogy of Fallot, which is one of the commonest congenital cyanotic heart disease. So as I was saying, in case of cyanotic heart disease, we'll get three things in common. That is cyanosis, clubbing, and polycythemia. Because of hypoxia, there will be increased red blood cell production. So it can be with increased pulmonary blood flow. That example, transposition of great vessels, great arteries, truncus arteriosus, single ventricle, total anomalous pulmonary venous circulation, and what is this one? Hypoplastic left heart syndrome. And diseases with decreased pulmonary blood flow, tetralogy of Fallot, tricuspid atresia, Epstein anomaly, and pulmonary atresia. These four are in common thing that is called Fallot physiology. Next slide. So it is diagnosed by Fallot, who described the term in 1888. The incidence is 10% of all forms of congenital heart disease and is the most common cardiac malformation responsible for cyanosis after 1 year of age. That means most of the congenital cyanotic heart disease will either have to be operated or they will die by itself if not corrected. So after 1 year, it is mainly the Fallot's tetralogy, those children who will survive. So it is the commonest cause of heart disease after 1 year. What is the pathology? Mainly two important pathology actually is a tetrad. You get pulmonary obstruction, pulmonary valve obstruction. Then your large VSD, overriding of the aorta, and right ventricular hypertrophy. So first, most important pathology is the pulmonary valvular obstruction or pulmonary outlet obstruction. A VSD large enough to equalize pressure in both ventricles. The VSD is actually almost, the ventricular septum is non-existent, so it is basically a common ventricle. The right and left ventricular combined together. The right ventricular outflow obstruction in the pulmonary valve. Right ventricular hypertrophy is there. That is not enlargement, but there is concentric hypertrophy of the right ventricle, and overriding of the aorta is there. VSD is perimembranous defect with extension into the subpulmonary region. VSD is non-restrictive method. VSD is silent, it is non-restrictive and is very large. The right ventricular outflow obstruction, it can be infundibular stenosis. In most of the cases, it is 45% infundibular stenosis. Pulmonary valve stenosis 10% and combination in 30%. In few cases, in very few cases, in 15%, it can be pulmonary atresia. That means the pulmonary valve will be absent. Other associated anomalies can be there. Pulmonary annulus and the main pulmonary artery are hypoplastic. Right-sided aortic arch in 25% of cases. In many books, it is written 15 to 30%. And abnormal coronary artery insertion in 5% of cases. So here you can see the main defect of the tetralogy of. There is pulmonary valvular obstruction, and this is the large VSD, where the right ventricular valve blood is going into the left ventricle and into the systemic circulation, and that's why we get that mixed blood with the deoxygenated blood from the right side and oxygenated blood from the left ventricle. This is going in the aorta, and here you get variable degree of cyanosis. Now, this cyanosis or the mixture of the blood or the flow of the blood from the right ventricle to the left ventricle depends on the pulmonary stenosis. More the severe stenosis, more blood will be flowing from the right ventricle to the left ventricle. If the stenosis is not severe enough, good amount of blood will be flowing to the pulmonary trunk and less amount will be mixing with the systemic circulation. So you'll get less cyanosis in these cases. Here you see the pulmonary artery is, the bore is good enough and some amount of blood is going through the aortic circulation. Next. Here the stenosis is more, so there is decreased amount of blood going through the pulmonary artery and much of the blood is going through aorta. Next. Next. So here the stenosis is severe, only a trickle of blood is going through the pulmonary circulation and most of the blood is shunted through the ventricular septal defect and going into the aorta, and so you get good amount of cyanosis in the systemic circulation. Now history, there will be appearance of cyanosis. It can be just after neonatal period or few months after birth. Exception is tetralogy of Fallot with pulmonary atresia. If there is pulmonary atresia, you get cyanosis immediately after birth. There will be hypoxemic spells. The baby may be of low birth weight, and some children suffer from developmental delay and growth delay also. Growth related retardation also may be there, and there will be easy fatigability. Sorry, the effort intolerance should have been there. There will be easy fatigability and effort intolerance. Effort intolerance means the child can do some work, but after some time he or she has to take rest, and most of the time it is in the squatting position. We'll come into that. So on examination, you will get cyanosis that is variable, mainly over the tip of the nose, tip of the tongue. You can see the nail bed. Clubbing, you know various grades of clubbing. Polycythemia will be there. The eyes are usually congested. Tachypnea, not always, but many of the time we get tachypnea. And effort intolerance actually is a symptom. When the child complains of effort intolerance, he or she depends on the degree of severity of the pulmonary stenosis, can do some work, can play also, can work also for some time, but after some time he or she has to take rest. That is effort intolerance. This is a example of polycythemia where the tongue is red and cyanosed also. If the child is anemic, you won't get cyanosis. But usually in cyanotic heart disease, you get polycythemia, but there is relative iron deficiency. When there's polycythemia, the red blood cell production is more, but the iron supply is same, so there can be relative iron deficiency. So that has to be corrected. Here you see there is clubbing of the fingers and toes. This is the squatting position. A child with tetralogy of Fallot typically takes this position to take rest, and this gives relief from tachypnea and all this finding. Now, why do this tetralogy of Fallot has this cyanotic spell? When there is how this happen? When there's increased activity, there will be increased respiration. So whenever we work more, our rate of breathing increases. There will be increased venous return. With venous return, there will be increased circulation also, but the pulmonary flow is fixed. As the valve is stenotic or the outflow is obstructed, so there will be fixed pulmonary blood flow, and more amount of blood will flow to the left ventricle to the VSD, and so we get more cyanosis. So when we do squatting, how does it help us? We cut off all the joints and there will be decreased venous return. When you are flexing all the joints, there will be decreased venous return, and this will increase the systemic vascular resistance. When there is increased systemic vascular resistance, less amount of blood will flow to the aorta. So the aortic blood flow will be obstructed to some extent, and this will try to increase the pulmonary blood flow. And that's how the cyanosis is decreased. Squatting is equivalent to knee chest position. If you hold the child in knee chest position also, this is equivalent to squatting position, or the child sitting with flexed limbs, mother carrying the child with folded limbs. And in a small infant, you can carry the child in your lap with folded limbs. Usually, a child with tetralogy of Fallot does not suffer from congestive cardiac failure until and unless it is complicated by anemia, infective endocarditis. There can be some valvular regurgitation, aortic regurgitation also, which can precipitate CCF. Surgically created or naturally occurring large left to right shunt, systemic hypertension, unrelated or coincidental myocardial disease. If any of these features are there, there can be congestive cardiac failure. Per se, your tetralogy TOF does not suffer from congestive cardiac failure. If there is CCF, you have to suspect some other diagnosis. Now, on examination, a few things I've missed, I think. In the first heart sound is normal. Second heart sound is single, where you hear the aortic component, only the A2. Because of P2 of severe pulmonary stenosis, the P2 is muffled or very late, so only the aortic component of the second heart sound is heard. So you get normal first heart sound, single second heart sound. You get a systolic trill, left parasternal systolic trill, you may get, and you get grade 3 or above ejection systolic murmur in the pulmonary area. Mind that the VSD is silent. As this is a large VSD with no flow obstruction, there is free flow of blood, so there is no murmur in the VSD. It is the flow of blood to the stenotic valve that causes the murmur, so it is the pulmonary systolic ejection systolic murmur in the pulmonary area. So intensity of the murmur depends on the severity of the pulmonary stenosis or right ventricular outflow obstruction. More severe the obstruction, shorter and softer murmur will be heard. In pulmonary atresia, murmur is either absent or very soft. In case of pulmonary atresia, the murmur will be absent altogether. Auscultation of the back is important to find the presence of major aortopulmonary collateral arteries. Many cases you get major collaterals between the aorta and the pulmonary artery. So you have to auscultate the back where you can get a humming sound for this collateral arteries. Now there are certain variants of tetralogy of Fallot. There can be acyanotic or pink TOF. That means the right ventricular obstruction is mild. So clinically, picture resembles VSD. If the pulmonary stenosis is very mild, pulmonary obstruction is very mild, so there will be no cyanosis. There's good amount of blood is flowing through the pulmonary artery, and it is termed as pink Fallot. Pentalogy of Fallot, there can be associated ASD, tetralogy of Fallot with pulmonary atresia, tetralogy with absent pulmonary valve with absence of branch pulmonary. All these other congenital anomalies of the heart can be there associated with tetralogy of Fallot. TOF can be associated with certain syndromes like fetal Haydn-Toine syndrome. If the mother is taking Haydn-Toine, there is phenytoin during her antenatal period, taking carbamazepine, fetal alcohol syndrome, mainly phenylketonuria in the mother, can cause this TOF birth defect. Catch-22 is a combination of defect of the heart, abnormal phases, thymic hypoplasia, cleft palate, and hypoglycemia. This is known as catch-22. Already done. Now coming to the investigation part, if we do the CBC, we'll find there's polycythemia. The hematocrit is more than 65%. Hemoglobin is very high, 17, 18 like that may be there. And anemia may be there due to relative iron deficiency. We do ECG, X-ray, echocardiography, and angiogram if required. So in ECG, mainly you get right axis deviation for right ventricular hypertrophy. That's the main finding. Now, most important investigation is chest X-ray. Two findings you have to remember. This is a boot-shaped heart. There is a core and saber appearance, sabot, where there is no narrow pulmonary base, and right ventricular hypertrophy causes lifting of the apex, rounded apex. Whenever there is right ventricular hypertrophy, you find that the apex is lifted in any case. And when there is left ventricular hypertrophy, this will be cutting sharply. Sharply against the diaphragm. So when you find a rounded apex, and on palpation also, in case of right ventricular hypertrophy, you will get the apex which is very difficult to localize. It is not touching the finger. But in left ventricular hypertrophy, you can pinpoint the apex with your single finger. So this is a right ventricular hypertrophy with narrow pulmonary base giving a boot-shaped appearance. And here you see very important finding is oligemic lung fill. As because the pulmonary circulation is less, so you don't find the pulmonary vascular marking. At least 2/3 of the lung fill will be oligemic. Less vasculature will be seen. And in VSD and all, you will get plethoric lung fill. When there is increased pulmonary circulation, you get the whole thing is increased pulmonary vascular marking, that is plethoric lung fill. Right atrial enlargement may be there in 25% case, and in few cases you can see right-sided aortic arch in 25% cases. In echocardiography, you can see the large VSD and the pulmonary stenosis. Now again coming to the hypoxic spell, that is also known as hypercyanotic spell or TET spell or hypoxic spell. Mechanism is secondary to infundibular spasm and or decreased systemic vascular resistance with increased right to left shunting at the VSD. So one side there is infundibular spasm or right ventricular outflow obstruction, and secondarily there will be decreased systemic vascular resistance. So more blood will tend to flow through the aorta. and this will result in diminished pulmonary blood flow. So peak incidence is 2 to 4 months. It can happen in any age. Usually occurs in the morning, after crying, after waking up from sleep, after crying, feeding, or defecation. Severe spell may lead to limpness, convulsion, cerebrovascular accident, and even death. The child becomes hypercyanotic, there's increased bluishness, the child will be crying intensely, is in agony, and all hypoxic spells are life-threatening. And this can lead to unconsciousness, convulsion, and can lead to, because of hypoxia in the brain, there can be cerebrovascular accident resulting in hemiplegia. Sudden onset of cyanosis or deepening of cyanosis, sudden onset of dyspnea will be there. Alteration in consciousness encompassing a spectrum of irritability to syncope, decrease in intensity, or even disappearance of the systolic murmur. During hypercyanotic spell, there can be disappearance of the systolic murmur in the pulmonary area because the pulmonary circulation is almost absent there, and most of the blood is going through the systemic circulation. So first you put the child in the management, you first put the child in the niches position or squatting position, which will, as we have discussed before, it will decrease the venous return and increase the systemic vascular resistance. Two physiological things we have to do. We have to cut down the venous return and increase the systemic vascular resistance. So that's how we decrease the systemic blood flow and increase the pulmonary blood flow. We can sedate the child with morphine sulfate 0.2 milligram because the child is very much agitated. Subcutaneous lead can be given, or IM also. This suppresses the respiratory center and abolishes hyperapnea. So there is tendency to hyperapnea. There will be hyperventilation. So this will depress the respiratory center and decrease the hyperapnea. Oxygen as such has little effect, but still it is given. Acidosis is there. The pH of the blood will come down. So if there is documented acidosis, give sodium 1 milliequivalent per kg IV. Preceding treatment, the patient becomes less cyanotic and heart murmur becomes louder. Indicates increased amount of blood flowing through the stenotic right ventricular outflow. Right? If hypoxic spell not fully responding to this, we can give vasoconstrictor, phenylephrine. Propranolol IV can be given 0.01 to 0.25 milligram IV, which reduces the heart rate and may reverse the spell. Ketamine also increases systemic vascular resistance and sedates the patient. So other options are, we can give phenylephrine, propranolol, ketamine, along with sodium and morphine. Now, how to prevent this hypoxic spell? We can give oral propranolol. Any child who has the tendency of suffering from this hypoxic spell or cyanotic spell, we can give prophylactic oral propranolol therapy 0.5 to 1.5 milligram per kg every 6 hours to prevent the spells. Relative iron deficiency anemia should be detected and treated. In case when in a child suffering from repeated spells, balloon dilatation of the right ventricular outflow tract can be done, but not widely practiced nowadays. Maintenance of good dental hygiene and for prevention against infective endocarditis. This child has a tendency to suffer from infective endocarditis, so maintain good oral hygiene. Hematocrit has to be maintained below 65%. Phlebotomy may be needed to prevent polycythemia. Now, in these cases, shunt procedure has to be done. And who are the candidates for shunt procedure? Neonates with pathology of Fallot and pulmonary atresia. That has to be done immediately after birth, as soon as you diagnose. Otherwise, it's not compatible with life until unless there is some PDA which can help in survival. Infants with hypoplastic pulmonary annulus. In case of severe pulmonary hypoplastic pulmonary arteries, when there is severe defect which is not compatible with life for a long time, we have to do this in the very infancy or during neonatal period. Next. The most common shunt that is done is balactosing, which anastomosis between the subclavian artery and the ipsilateral pulmonary artery, performed in infants older than 3 months of age. Other operations are Waterson's operation, Gore-Tex interposition, and POTS operation, which are not very popular nowadays. Next. So here you see the part of the subclavian artery is fixed with the left pulmonary, same-sided left pulmonary artery, which increases the pulmonary circulation. Now the best thing to do is total carotid surgery. Now more and more cardiothoracic surgeon and many of the institutes are advocating total carotid surgery without doing this shunt operation because of better post-operative management and all, and it is seen the survival of the child and long-term outcome of the child is better with total carotid surgery. So who are the candidates? Symptomatic infants with favorable anatomy of the right ventricular outflow obstruction and with pulmonary atresia. Asymptomatic and minimally cyanotic children may have repair between 3 and 24 months depending on the degree of annular and pulmonary artery hypoplasia. Mildly cyanotic who had previous shunt surgery may have total repair with 1 to 2 years after shunt operation. Asymptomatic children with coronary artery anomalies may have to get repaired by 3 to 4 years of age. But timing of surgery varies with institution, but early surgery is generally preferable because it helps in overall growth and development also. Conventional surgery is patch closure of the VSD, widening of the right ventricular outflow obstruction, and take down of the prior shunt. If the prior shunt was done, it has to be closed down. Now there are certain complication of the 10 minutes operation. So there can be congestive cardiac failure as there can be some left to right shunt now. Residual outflow obstruction sometimes may be there. VSD may be functioning here. So now there will be left to right shunt and pulmonary regurgitation also there. Also sometimes may be there. Aortic flutter, there can be rate rhythm disturbances like aortic flutter, atrial flutter, ventricular arrhythmias, right bundle branch block, and these children will need prophylaxis for infective endocarditis. They are more prone to infective endocarditis now. Yes. Complication of pathology of erythrocytosis we have discussed. Brain abscess can be there. Acute gouty, there can be hyperuric acid and gouty arthritis can be there. Infective endocarditis, cerebrovascular thrombosis like CVA, and this hemiplegia may be there. There can be delayed puberty. This fellow physiology we have already discussed. Okay, thank you so much. Ajay, just a minute. You have left. Okay. So out of last two classes, what I wanted to say, from rheumatic fever, two questions we prepare, mainly the diagnosis and management of rheumatic fever for long question, and for short note you may have to do this Jones criteria. So usually you get these two questions from rheumatic fever, and from tetology of alert, mainly you get short note on TET spell or cyanotic spell. So these two questions you get prepared. Okay, thank you so much. And next class, hopefully we'll see again on next Thursday.